Hey everyone, and welcome back to IDEANTHRO Movement and Water. That's right, this is a joint episode. And on this episode, we are asking ourselves a question. How many times do you need to try a task to have a pretty good chance of succeeding, particularly when that task is quite difficult? How many times do you need to try a difficult task to have a pretty good chance of at least one of those attempts succeeding? Okay, so from an IDEANTHRO movement point of view, this is going to be the first of several episodes digging into this topic. From a water point of view, we're going to use some water examples, and that's why this particular episode is a joint episode with water. If you like this episode and then want to kind of continue, and you're like normally a water viewer, but you want to hear the movement side, you can always cross over and find subsequent movement videos. Okie dokie. So why are we asking this question? As it turns out, in these two interests of ours, in movement and water, there's heaps of opportunities to do really interesting things. In the water space, it's opportunities to fundamentally change the way we manage water in our cities to the betterment of society as a whole. And in movement, there's all these really interesting ways we can challenge ourselves personally and physically to learn and see what we can do. The problem with these opportunities, is that they're not necessarily easy. And we kind of like it for that reason. You might pick up a hint here that we like to kind of pick things that are a little bit difficult and work on them. But the point here is that they're not necessarily easy to do. And so if you come along and you're like, oh yeah, I want to try this thing, but it's a difficult thing, and you give it an attempt or two, well, what are your chances that you're actually going to succeed? So let's dig into that. Let's see. Let's use a really simple mathematical example. I'm not going to go into this in heaps and heaps of detail, but just enough to kind of make a little point here. So imagine that you're going to try a difficult task. You can imagine any task you want, so long as it's not going to kill or maim you if you fail, right? You need to still be in good fighting shape afterwards to have another attempt if you don't succeed. Okay? So you can imagine whatever you want, as long as it's not going to kill or maim you. And now let's pretend that the chance of success on any given attempt of that task is 10%, right? So you got a 1 in 10 chance of succeeding when you try. How many times do you need to try that task in order to have at least a 90% chance that one of those attempts, not all of them, not even half of them, but one of those attempts will succeed? How many times? Well, an obvious answer might be 10. You got a 1 in 10 chance, and we want to have a 90% chance. Maybe we need to try about 10 times. Actually, maybe we only need to try 9, because it's a 1 in 10 chance times 9 is 90%. Turns out that's not the answer. If you try 10 times, you only have a 65% chance that one of those times is going to succeed. That's pretty low. So how many do you need to try to have at least a 90% chance of success? You need to try 22 times, right? If any individual attempt has a 1 in 10 chance of succeeding, you have to try 22 times to have a chance that even one of those 22, to have at least a 90% chance that even one of those 22 times succeeds. It's a lot. The takeaway here is that in this simplified example, it's far more than you'd think. Now, of course, in the real world, we probably don't actually know the chance of success. So it's not here. This is not about computing, well, every time I'm trying a difficult task, I should try exactly 22 times. There's no 10,000 hours style rule here. The 10,000 hour rule isn't a rule anyway, but there's no hard number here. The takeaway is the principle, which is you probably need to try more times than you would otherwise think you would. And just to put this in perspective, if you want a 99% chance of success, which is pretty close to certainty, you need to try 44 times. Okay, so that being the case, let's now use a couple of examples where we bring this into the movement world and the water world. Let's start with water. So way back in episode 197, I made an argument for the fact that with contemporary, widely implemented water-sensitive urban design, For those of you who are here on the movement path, just a quick definition. Water-sensitive urban design is effectively a concept for how we can design our cities better so that they don't screw up our waterways and water cycle, right? So think of it as a better way of managing water in our cities to not screw stuff up, like the environment. Now, water-sensitive urban design, contemporary technologies. Way back in episode 197, I made the argument that these technologies that we currently have and implement widely are too costly to implement at the scale necessary to make a really true difference to the health of our waterways in our cities, right? So any individual bioretention system, right, can be very effective at treating pollutant. And in a particular development, it might be particularly effective. But if you scale this up across the whole city, and you look at the cost of maintenance, for example, it's just too expensive, in my opinion, to implement at a widespread scale. So my conclusions, drawing kind of on a few other things after that, was effectively, look, we should be focusing our effort much less on implementing current technologies and instead on innovating to come up with what is going to be the next cheapest, newest approach to this. The challenge with that is that such innovations have a low chance of success. Any one given innovation, I come like, that would be a good idea. Any one given attempt that I make at that has a pretty low chance of success. And so if we combine that with what we're talking about in this episode, what it says is, if we want an overall good chance that we might actually find the answer to this problem, find what this cheap new approach might be, then we need to set up a system and a process that encourages really regular attempts, because we need to make a lot of attempts at this. And at the moment, I would argue that the way that people in this sector go about this, because there are people trying to innovate, but I would suggest that we're not innovating in enough different ways simultaneously. We're having like a little go here and a little go there. It's akin to coming up against the difficult problem and going like, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. And having a go or two, but no more. So, takeaway for the water world here is that we definitely need to, in my opinion, shouldn't say definitely, my opinion at present, I've been trying to stop that sneeze for ages. My opinion at present is that we need to set up systems such that we try lots of different ideas that will make water-sensitive urban design cheaper in the long term to give us the best chance that one or a few of them might work. Okay, so what about a movement example? Well, let me make this real. I really quite enjoy bouldering, which is a really technical form of rock climbing. And sometimes when I go to the bouldering gym, because you can do it indoor or outdoor, when I go indoor climbing, I see people come in and climb, and you get a whole mix of people. People who are really experienced, people who've got a bit of experience like me. I'm by no means an expert climber. I'm not a beginner, but I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just stuck in the boring middle sort of situation. Actually, I'm not stuck in the boring middle. I'm progressing through the boring middle. But the point here being, I see people come in, and when you see people who are relatively new to the sport come in, you see this really regular pattern where there are a couple of things that distinguish those people who come in new to the sport, who succeed and grow, and those who don't really go anywhere and kind of just fade away or don't make progress. Maybe they continue to climb and enjoy it, which is an end in itself, and no criticisms if that's your approach to things. But what separates the people who do stick with it and make good progress and don't, there's a couple of things. And one of them is simply a willingness to keep attempting the same climb over and over and over. You see this situation where some people will come up to that first climb, that they want to try, and they'll fail, and they'll try again, and they'll try again, and they'll try again, and again, and again, and again. And those people will eventually get it. Now, tied into this, the other thing that really helps, the other factor here, is the mindset and the processing and the iteration of, oh, well, I tried that, so I'm going to try this. And like, there's some mindset stuff tied into this as well, which is the other thing that's going on. But coming back to the lots of trying, the big thing that separates is you just see lots of people who give it a crack, give it 2 or 3 goes, and then it's as if, oh no, it's too tough. I've decided I can't do it, and they walk away. And so the big separating factor here isn't actually the difficulty of the climb. Look, if you come in as a newbie and try and climb the hardest grades, of course it's just the difficulty of the climb that's holding you back. But if you're climbing something that is, challenging for you, but not just ridiculously out of this ballpark, the biggest distinguishing factor as to whether you succeed at that climb and the degree to which you improve is simply how many times you try it. If you are prepared to put in the effort of trying over and over and over, the progress happens. The mistake that I think that a lot of people come across is that they expect that if it is something that they are currently capable of doing, that they should be able to do it in an attempt or two. And that's wrong, because there are many things that are very challenging to do, but which you are fundamentally capable of, things that you might have a 1 in 10 chance of doing, right? There are many things that you are fundamentally capable of, but which are pretty challenging for you. And in those instances, as we've demonstrated in this episode, it takes way more than a go or two. It takes way more than 10 goes potentially. It takes many goes, many more than you thought, in order to succeed. And so that's the takeaway from this episode. Now, for those of you who are going to follow us in the future movement episodes, we're then going to delve into the challenge that arises here, which is it's all well and good to conceptually know what's going on. It's all well and good to conceptually understand that, even if I fail a couple of times, it doesn't mean that it's not inherently impossible for me. I may well be able to do it, but I might just need more goes than I thought. The problem there is that if you get 5, 10, 20 goes into something, at some point, your self-talk is going to get a little challenging. You're going to start to doubt whether you can actually do it. Because the thing here is, right, in our example, we use something with a 1 in 10 chance. But when you're innovating in the water sense of urban design, or when you're jumping on the rock climbing wall, you don't know what the chance is. You don't know whether it's a 1 in 2 chance, a 1 in 5, a 1 in 10, 1 in 50, 1 in 100 chance of you doing it. So you can't then sit there and process and be like, oh yeah, if I have 22 goes at this, I'll know, right? You have no idea. And so you don't know where the end point is. You've had 20 goes on this climb. Well, am I reasonably making progress? Am I getting closer? The self-talk can start to set in that pulls you away. Even if you conceptually know that you should keep going, can start to set in and hold you back. And so, in the next episode, I am going to discuss a couple of mental hacks and physical hacks that you can use to change that self-talk and bring back in the belief, rein yourself back in, so that then your conceptual understanding of this can still allow you to keep attempting, even when your self-talk's threatening to pull you back a little. The reason that it's going to be only a movement episode and not a water episode is the fact that, as far as I can see, these techniques are more applicable to a movement setting, but I can see how they'd apply in like a professional water setting, so it's probably worth a watch. But I'm going to talk about this very specifically in the context of movement, so we're going to make it just a movement episode. Okie dokie, that is enough for now. So the takeaway is, when doing difficult tasks, when trying difficult tasks, it's probably going to take more attempts than you think in order to have a reasonable chance of one of those attempts succeeding. And therefore, we need to be prepared to try more and to set in place processes and systems that allow us to try more than we otherwise thought we would have. Okie dokie. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, there's a few things you can do. You can give us a like or a subscribe. You can also go to IDEANTHRO.com/movement to find out more about what it is that we do. Check out, for example, our facility in Oxley in Brisbane, Australia. If you're interested in coming down and training with us, if you're like, yeah, I like a place that doesn't just bash the living daylights out of us with silly exercises, but we actually get our teeth into some real movement challenges, then you might want to sign up to our Oxley facility. You might want to become a member, come train with us. You can come for a free trial. Check out what it is that we do. You can go to ideanthro.com/free-trial. If you just want to get in touch, maybe suggest an episode, contribute to our thinking on this, you can go to ideanthro.com/connect. Okie dokie, we are done. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.